nations at thy feet. In the bonds of love we meet. Hear our voices, we entreat. God defend our free land. God Pacific triple star, from the shafts of strife and war. Make her praises heard afar. God defend New Zealand. God bless you all, New Zealand.
Awesome. Why don't you give yourselves a hand, New Zealand? I say New Zealand because you represent what is best about this nation. So put your hands together, give yourselves a hand, give yourselves a pat on the back. Welcome Wellington, welcome to those who've come from all around the country to be here today. As you've seen from our opening speaker, we are here to put on trial the government of this nation. Before we do that, I want to give a bit of context, and I'd like to invite our first speaker up, first of all, to give you a context as to why we are here today. We've come on a bit of a journey, haven't we? Who's come on a bit of a journey? Gone through hell and come back, still standing, still smiling. Give it up for Aucklanders who've come all the way from Auckland. I'm giving you guys a special mention because back in October, when your city became the largest concentration camp in the country, our Prime Minister locked you down. Locked the South Island down as well. But there was a man who decided to stand up and speak up even when the city was on lockdown. When you get locked down, you don't keep your mouth shut. You stand up and you speak up for what is right. And this man stood and wanted to stand with a few other people as well. But as you heard at Civic Square, others who were invited to stand, when they realized the threat that was imposed upon them by the police, decided that they would rather not stand. In spite of that, this man decided, I will still stand and I will instigate across the country a national protest platform, a united national protest platform. Let me make that quite clear. You know, he stood against even his family's wishes to stand that day. I wouldn't want my dad to stand up there and put his own freedom and livelihood at risk, but he did that. And you know the reward that came with that. For standing up and holding a mic in your hand to exercise your free rights as a proud New Zealander, he got 10 days in prison. I'm not just talking about 10 days in prison, I'm talking about 10 days in solitary confinement, isolating him from a prison population. What were they afraid of? That he would infect a population of prisoners on how to believe in themselves, how to back themselves, how to know their true identity, their true power, how to stand up with courage and to fight for themselves. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, even the High Court of the judge, when it got to the High Court, conceded that it was wrong for him to have been in prison for the thing that he did. But you know what, the Crown would not give up. And they said, we don't want this man just to go scot-free. We're not happy about that. And so you know what happened? 78 days, not just free to walk around on the streets, but 78 days under 24-hour house arrests. 24-hour house arrests while we have true criminals that are running rampant in this nation. That gives you an example of how things have turned upside down. But I tell you what, folks, by then it was too late. The protest movement that was started on that day has progressed and spread right throughout the country. 160 united, organised protests later, this man was able to unite a front of amazing men, might I say, courageous men, and still courage in men right throughout the nation, myself included. And I tell you what happened under that united leadership. Look what happened throughout the cities of this nation, from the far north and Whangarei, Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Whakatane, Rotorua, Gisborne, Hastings, New Plymouth, Wellington, Nelson, Christchurch, and I'll throw in there Dunedin as well. That's the united protest movement that was instigated to provide a platform of expression for every free New Zealander. I'm grateful that this man's sacrifice didn't just talk the talk. A lot of people can talk the talk about freedom.
Just like those politicians.
That's right, just like those politicians. But few people can walk the walk. And so I'm grateful to this man for sacrificing his own freedom and livelihood. So if there are any dissenting voices amongst us, it's time to cut it out. We got no more time for division. You know what our leadership is? Look behind you and see who is following you. Time to look towards that. The most powerful voice in this nation is not the voice of our politicians. I thought they were our politicians. It's not the voice of the police. It's not the voice of the judiciary. They all shut us out. They shut you out. The most powerful voice in this nation is the people. But has anyone bothered to ask us? No one has bothered to ask you. So here we are to stand today. I want to honour you, Brian Tamaki, the founder of the Freedom and Rights Coalition, for the united platform that you have established for every New Zealander. Every New Zealander to stand up and give expression to the life and the best life that they want in the most beautiful country in the world. I am looking forward to what you're going to bring to us today, for the hope that's going to come. So please put your hands together and welcome the founder of the Freedom and Rights Coalition, Brian Tamaki.
Charge them. Hello, New Zealand. I've got sunglasses on, not because God is shining the sun on us after many days of rain and flooding. It's appropriate that we've had this beautiful day. I have really got my sunglasses on because a couple of tears fell out of my eyes. Tears for our nation. Tears for those who had great loss in the last 2.5, 3 years of the tyranny of this government, who forced people, did not lead, was not kind, and did not consider the outcomes that would be on the nation that trusted her and her government and Parliament to work for us and not against us. But anyway, before I speak a little bit for you and we get underway and have this long and waiting court session, I want to just welcome somebody and thank you very much, Heker, for that wonderful introduction. It was a incredibly torrid time, very taxing. I don't think a lot of people really realised what we, my wife Hannah, and our family actually went through to just stand and attend a peaceable, legal protest. And then I wasn't to know that the most dangerous weapon in this country is not guns, bullets, bombs, knives, or even wayward politicians' mouths. It was actually a mic in the hand of people who believe that we deserve better. So I want to give my wife a couple of minutes. She's the one that's had to be the jailer at my home. And when I was in 24-hour curfew, the police said that they would just turn up randomly, and if I wasn't found at home, I'd be straight back in prison. So here she is. I want you to put your hands together for a beautiful lady. Hannah.
Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai. It's so wonderful to have you here, and isn't it a glorious day? I think people thought we were going to get thunderstorms and rain, but we're so thankful for the beautiful weather that's come and for the beautiful people that you all are. I just want to know who I send my invoice to for 72 days of being a jailer. It was not easy. He was not an easy prisoner, I tell you that. Sometimes he was fun and sometimes he was not. And the other thing is, for all of you that were able to go to every other protest, good on you. You practiced your right to attend peaceful protests. I salute you. We were not able to be here. We had the police come to our house to make sure that he was home. You know, a few things, but reality is we're here, and I want to say this. We were here 18 years ago to the day, standing for families. We had our 3 married children here, and we had 4 grandchildren. Today we have 10 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. We are not the sort of people that grow weary in doing the right things and doing good. And there is no way we will allow our children, our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to fight the fights that we are capable of fighting for. So for the parents out here, for the grandparents, and I know there are great-grandparents here today, I want to say thank you for your courage. Thank you for your aroha. Thank you for the people that you are and the family that you encouraged and supported. I also want to say for those that are unvaxxed and vaxxed, we are the same people. There is no segregation in that. We are one people. We will always be one people. Don't let people say we class ourselves differently. We do not. I'm not going to talk much longer, but all I want to say is I really respect your stands. I must admit he was a hard prisoner, but unconditional love did kick in many, many times, and he was biting at the bit to be here. Those times he was not able to, it was a restraint, but self-discipline. But today is a free day, a day of freedom, a day that we will remember, a day that we will celebrate. So thank you again from the depths of our heart and our beings. God bless you all.
All right. Mr. Speaker of the House, Trevor Mallard, you just lost your job. That lady ought to be your replacement. Okay, I've just got a few minutes they've given me, and then we'll get on to the real stuff. I just want to bring a bit more highlight to what Hannah said, that 18 years ago, her and I and thousands of others came to this very parliamentary grounds. And that day we came here because we had to stand up to protect our families, our children and our grandchildren's future, as Hannah said. Because even way back 18 years ago, it's almost come into 2 decades. And I was facing the Prime Minister then, the Honourable Helen Clark. And in that day I can distinctly remember coming here, and it was called Enough is Enough. Isn't it amazing, ironic, that we're standing here 18 years later and having to say the same 3 words. Enough is enough. That tells you a whole lot, because when we started back there, we were doing it for my son and my 2 daughters. Now, as Hannah said, 10 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. That's my son over there with the Enough is Enough on it. And then my son-in-law and my daughters here and my extended family. Having to stand and come to the place that's supposed to be protecting us, not punishing us. that I had to stand here with thousands of others to just protect our family from what I believe began the beginning of a government that just started to go rogue, decided to turn our nation into something else that we did not want and something else that doesn't belong in this country. This is not the nation I grew up in. This is not the New Zealand I remember, where we had freedoms, where we had our individual rights, that we weren't restricted and controlled and intruded upon and interfered, least of all the government. And yet it's happened. I can recall, and I remember that statue, and I was standing here, and they were allowed up here those days. It was fairly relaxed because there wasn't the tension, the frustration and the anger. So you can understand after 18 years they have not changed course. They have continued the far left liberal agenda, seeped into our country overnight from somewhere. Helen Clark was the instigator. And when I was standing here that day, I was told by a good friend that I have here that worked with the Labour government that she was up there looking out, as they are now. In fact, they've blacked it all out, I understand. They've blacked all the windows out. Put this up, it's like, when does a government hide itself inside the building we own, and we, the people, are out here? You would think, go on. Yeah, that's deserved. You deserve it. This Parliament. How can you have a healthy nation if your Parliament is very sick? Why weren't the politicians that we voted in, 120 House representatives? That's what you are, representatives. Not for your parties, not for your political flavour, not for Parliament. You are representatives for the people. You know, you've got to put your hands together and acknowledge that there are some tough Kiwis out here. On the way here, and thousands more wanted to be here, but they're trapped in the South Island. Not only by the floods and all the weather that came, but somehow they decided, the Transport Minister, I guess, and I think that's Michael Wood, the river of filth man. The only river of filth I know. He's the Transport Minister, I think. If I got it wrong, doesn't matter. You guys do that to us, so here's some payback. Somehow the ferries crossing had to be serviced for 24 hours. So those South Islanders who battled road detours that took them an extra 7 hours, I mean, talk about democracy in a free country. And so they couldn't get across. Many of them got trapped. So all our South Island brothers that couldn't make it today, we're standing for you. Now, hold on a minute. You know, if I was the South Island, I'd start declaring itself an independent state. If you so want to cut us off and cut the ferries off, well, you might as well do it alone, South Island. You'd probably do far better, because you were locked down for 2 years and you didn't have a single case of COVID. That's nothing to do with health. Oh, we're going to enjoy a little bit more. Can I have 5 minutes, please, Speaker? And so, in the North Island, when there was people wanting to travel down, these are not fruitcakes, weirdos, you know, the fringe element. There's the everyday hard-working Kiwis here, and that's what I am too. You know, shame on our media that go out and start beginning to categorise us and tubby-hole us and say we're this and call you that, conspiracy theorist, and you know, the wacky edge. I've been in this country for 64 years. I've worked hard all my life. I've got a farming background. I have my own business in forestry. I'm a musician. I was a great rugby player. And I played league and rugby, and I did well and represented rugby. And I had the Mark II Zephyr. was the car of the day, Mark II Zephyr. And I'd carry my crate of Waikato, yes sir, the Waikato beer in the back. Some young people won't know what I'm talking about. Those are the days that we're free and young, we could go and fly like an eagle. We used to drink water out of the tap then, and we're all alive today. We used to leave our cars unlocked on the streets and nobody converted our cars. We used to leave our windows and our front door and back door open, the whole neighbourhood and the extended family whānau. That was the police force then. We all looked after each other. Kids could play into the dark and we all got home safely without being molested or abducted. Nobody shot guns in our houses and bullets. The only guns we had as a farming family, and every farmer had a shotgun and a 303 at the front door. And there was never anybody getting shot. In those days, the only thing you shot was rabbits, possums, and cows. Oh, no, that's farmers, mate. I'm all for farmers. Put your hand up and clap for the farmers. Eh? But you know what? That life's gone. I don't necessarily say let's get back to New Zealand we had. I want to see a new New Zealand created. A better one than what we had before this COVID came. 120 House representatives in the last protest. I wasn't here. I was on my way down, but the police warned me from here in Levin. I got to Levin. The three of the guys driving me down, they said, my lawyer told me, if I came down here, I'd be immediately arrested. I said, carry on, boys. They said, no. They turned back and took me home. Probably was a wise decision. But I want to say to you that that moment was a critical moment in the history of our country and in the fate of this house behind me. It got to a point, and whatever you thought of the protesters or the protests, that's irrelevant to what I'm about to say. At one point, and we started that message way back in October when we first started, I was always anti-mandates, anti-coercion and forcing people to take some medical procedure or be threatened to lose your livelihoods. Who would have dreamed that New Zealand would ever got to that position in place? But this is what happened. And it's important to realise that 1 in 3 Kiwis at the height of the protest movement, working from October 21 to March this year to the unfortunate violent end, I want to say something to you. It was not just in the minds and the hearts of those that are called protesters. I call you people. We had to protest. But in our country, there are 1 in 3 New Zealanders, 1 in 3. I didn't do too well in maths, but I think that's about 1,700,000. I'll take that figure. The media always fudge numbers. 1.7 million Kiwis. Actually, even though it was tentative and they did it from the safety of their houses or their workplaces or the privacy of their bedroom, they said they agreed. They agreed with our message. They agreed with our stand at that point that the mandates must stop. It's damaging our country, it's wrecking our economy, and it's making us into a people that we don't want to be. 1 in 3. At that moment, like today, and Prime Minister, Labour, National, ACT, Māori and Greens, you need to hear this. You don't want to make the same mistake twice. That at that point, at least one, just one, that was the moment that a backbencher could have been a hero. Who would have put a statue of him or her next to that one. If one politician had the courage to come out and stand because they know they represent the people before towing a party line. We didn't vote you in there to knuckle down and be bullied into towing a party line when the people are demanding that you come and you listen to who employs you, who pays you. You come out there and you are supposed to be representing your constituents, your electorate, the people of New Zealand. It tells you how outdated Parliament is. This politics here in this Parliament is irrelevant to the needs of the progress that people have made over these years, and that's the problem. We got people who want to live, who want to fulfill their potential, but we have an outdated Parliament. This is what happened. Jacinda Ardern, you know what I'm talking about. It's no use going to the Official Information Act because apparently your members have been told not to write stuff in paper. So we, the public, can't get your devious dealings and behind closed doors so that we can get this all later and really get you to the International Court, which we're heading to. Now, you've got to understand, that was a critical moment in the history of New Zealand politics and this nation. So what Jacinda did, I've no doubt with Heker Robertson and others who were involved in this, they put together a cross-party agreement. Labour put it together. Now watch this. They sent it across to the Speaker of the House. He's the bully of all bullies. And Trevor Mallard, who's effective at bullying, went to Luxton of National Party, Seymour, who's supposedly been a freedom banner for us and there, but he ain't, of that, and the Māori Party, and of course the Greens. And they said, this is from Labour, this is a cross-party agreement that you will agree with and sign, that you will not let any of your MPs go out that door to speak to the people of New Zealand. Now, right there is hanging by a hair. If democracy wasn't quite dead in our country, it's about to die. They signed it. Luxton signed it. Seymour signed it. Māori Party signed it. And the Greens signed it. The moment they signed it, they were all signing their political death warrant. Even if you love ACT, even if you want to vote for National because you had enough of Labour, that's a bad move. Māori Party and Greens, they all... Do you know what opposition means? By the way, that's the biggest beneficiaries in the country, is the opposition, because they're not even in government, they're unemployed officially. So we're paying them a big smack of money, the taxpayers' money, to the opposition. Opposition means, in political terms, and understanding that in political relationships, the opposition is supposed to oppose the government for the people. Now, we were a hurting nation. We were a wounded nation. We have been through 2.5 years of hell, Jacinda. You ripped families apart. People's businesses were collapsed. Over 60,000 jobs. You mandated frontline workers like nurses, GPs, and the midwives. And you also destroyed our education system. Then it's not enough then, and you told the farmers we're going to regulate beyond reasonability. So our farmers are suffering. That's not enough too. She's gone after our firefighters and now undervaluing and underpaying them. Government doesn't even pay for a service that keeps fires out of our cities, towns and houses and anywhere else. But that's not enough. I got some more F's for you. She decided to mess with our freedoms. So it's not just farmers and firefighters, it's also our families and our freedoms. She messed and split up families with vaccine apartheid. We are now defined by a liquid in a little container. You're either vaxxed and unvaxxed. I've always been pro-choice, and I respect the choice of the vaxxed. You are our friends, you're not our enemies. And as Hannah said, the vaxxed and the unvaxxed have both been lied to. And so when they signed that agreement, at that point of moment, democracy was completely killed, the fate of that parliament. And hear me, New Zealand, because I know it's not just here. We have a huge support base out there in the country of New Zealand that couldn't be here today, and they wanted to be here, but there are more people for us than actually is for them. So we can't vote for anybody in that parliament. Now Luxton and Act and all of the others in the opposition are going around after taking away your freedoms and your rights and seeing us badly damaged through the bad policies of this government. Now they're coming back saying, vote for me. And I want to put this clearly out to mainstream New Zealand, and I'll talk about it when I finish just in a sec. I want to tell you now, you cannot vote for anybody in this. And you're probably saying, well, who can we vote for? Well, I'm going to bring you good news today. We don't have to put up with what they did to us. So definitely Labour hasn't been supporting this country. He's a Prime Minister who says, she said this, I will be the Prime Minister for all. Jacinda, you said all Kiwis. You would be the Prime Minister for us as well. We're hard-working, midstream, middle families, maybe under and over. There's a mixture of all sorts of people here. We're not fruitcakes. We're not extremists. I'm not an extremist. My evidence of my fruit and my work I've done in this country speaks for itself. I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband, and a great-grandfather. I've worked hard all my life, and I've seen my country go down the gurgler. You said you'd be our Prime Minister. I'm going to ask you, why don't you come out and show face today? And I know you're here. Ask the Minister of Police, Hipkins, to come. Ask the Minister of Police, Chris Hipkins, to come with you. Because a few years ago, the Minister, Chris Hipkins, he actually was here protesting in these grounds. You want to hear this? He was protesting, the Minister of Police, in these grounds. That's cool. They sat in, they had their reason why they protested, and it's a right. But they were charged and arrested. But later on, he received mercy through the court system, and he was discharged. So Connor, I'm asking, I still got my charges, Chris. And probably what you did was worse than I did, because all I did was speak like this at a protest that I'm allowed to be at, and you charged me, and I got these charges, and I kept getting charges because I'm not guilty. When are you guilty attending a protest and speaking? So I want you to tell the Central Police Station in Auckland to drop all charges against me and my men. And my wife's got charges on here too. You better.
Who will be represented by Prosecutor Heker Robertson. The defendant is the New Zealand Government. As yet, they have chosen not to attend court and have not provided representation. If they do not show, we will only hear from the prosecution today. The charge brought against the defendant is crimes against humanity, as detailed in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Specifically, Article 7, 1K. Inhumane acts intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body, mental or physical health. This is a serious charge. As a jury, your responsibility is to listen carefully to the accusations being made and the first-hand experiences of the witnesses. And after this, I will briefly recess the court for you to deliberate, and then will require your decision as to whether the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime that has been claimed. Jury, I thank you for your service today. I now invite the prosecutor to present his opening statements. Court is now in session.
Thank you, Your Honour. Your Honour, from 2020 to 2021 and 2022, in almost every area of society, this government has continuously failed to uphold its responsibility to its people. Like a financial sieve, its irresponsible decision-making has been draining New Zealand of resource. It has emptied taxpayer coffers as it implements inhumane policies in an effort to boost its own reputation on the international political stage. It locked out Kiwis from their own country at a time when they needed home the most. It left New Zealand businesses bleeding out, many with little chance of survival if they hadn't already died. And the hopes and dreams of hard-working everyday Kiwis lay steaming in its wake. New Zealand, Your Honour, is wounded and hurting, and the abuser is its own leadership. Shortly, Your Honour, I will invite a number of witnesses to the stand, and they will provide evidence of how the inhumane acts of the New Zealand government over the COVID-19 health response period have affected them personally. These accounts are confronting, but they show the brutality, the inhumanity that is the true representation of this government. Today, these witnesses will show you, and the jury will prove beyond reasonable doubt, that the New Zealand government is guilty of crimes against humanity for inhumane acts affected on its own people.
Thank you, prosecution. I now invite you to call your first witness to the stand.
Thank you, Justice Southey. The United Nations called domestic violence the shadow pandemic. Contributing factors included the stress of lockdowns, housing insecurity, financial stresses due to income loss and unemployment, and people's isolation from their support systems. And in New Zealand, we were not exempt from this. Prior to COVID, in 2019, Your Honour, there were 151,609 reported cases, domestic violence cases. That rose to 165,039 in 2020 as these restrictions were implemented, and at the height of the government's COVID measures in 2021, that number increased to over 172,000 cases of domestic violence, and those are just the ones that are reported. I now invite the first witness to the stand, Hazel Tukariri. Hazel, you're a witness to the claim that this government has acted inhumanely against its own people. Can you please tell the jury about what it was like to parent your children during the government's COVID-19 health response period?
Sure. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Hazel Tukariri. I just wanted to start off introducing myself and just being a voice for so many wahine out there and men that had their voice taken away. I was born and bred in Mangere and currently live in Manurewa. So right in the thick of what I'm about to speak about, my husband, he hails from the far north, from Quay and was raised in Bluff. So I'm speaking to anyone in between those towns. That's all of New Zealand right now. So I'm gonna set the tone and kōrero about domestic violence. So for me and my family, my whānau, I'm a mother of 11. Me and my husband have 11 children, and I'm proudly fully unvaxxed. So when our country went into this craze of lockdown, it was so daunting on me and my whānau. We have a housing house and we stay in Manurewa. So for our family being so big, what went on in my head and my husband's head was anxiety and worry and fear. If any of our children get sick, any of us get sick, that we could all die, because that's what the government told us. So we did lock our kids up. We wouldn't let them play outside. We wouldn't let them out the gate, because that's what the government told us to do. Not to associate with anybody else. So we live in a two-story home with, quite odd, there's a one-bedroom upstairs. And so me and my husband, we told our kids that that's where they will be staying until this lockdown is over. You can imagine the pressure our kids were under, and us as parents, we're very overprotective parents, and we just didn't want a germ or anything to come near our children, because this is what we were told. We were fooled. And we would sanitize the grounds, do, extreme things as parents. Sanitize our shoes. As we went up, I was a shopper, I went up the road. And during this time, it caused so much stress and frustration to our tamariki and to us. Every time someone exited the house, there was a kariki about that whether or not they're going to bring home COVID, and the anxiety I had being the person doing the shopping, I'm going to make all my kids sick. And that stand that I took to not be vaccinated, when the vaccination came around, the peer pressure that put on us as well. Let alone finances. I don't have to explain that with the amount of children I have. So let's talk about the violence, that side of things. It became violent even with my children. So during the COVID lockdown, I lost my kids. I was called neglectful because I wouldn't let them go to school when school reopened. But I was that afraid of sending my kids to school, because that's what we were told. That's what we were fooled, that I wouldn't let them. And I had children that were flying in school. They're doing so well. And while the media would show things on Good Morning like people colour coordinating their clothes, we didn't go through that, not at all. We were trying to fight for our family to stay well. So my kids my big girls, because they're bigger than me, one was in year 13, the other in year 12, and they would physically fight me to get down the stairs just to go to school. But I knew I was doing the right thing, because that's what the government told me.
Screw the government!
So my kids fought their way out the door and ran to school, within the first week, they started back. School was closed again. They were locked up again. So I felt like the government exposed my kids to the virus by letting them go back to school and go around everyone after telling us not to. And I feel like we will never get that time back. We will never undo the harm that has been done. So I just want to tap into that percentage of people that went through domestic violence. It was out the roof. We stayed in Rewa, there was call-outs all around us. So just know that you have a voice through me.
Hazel, the inhumane policies of the New Zealand government in regards to the police's ability to respond to domestic violence situations, those have affected you personally as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I sure can. So with me and my husband, because we're we're dealing with all these children that are upset, frustrated, had a guts full. You know, you put anyone in a room for this long, that it's like being in a cage. And we would have to deal with these whawhai all the time and try and settle and try and reassess everything every day. And it caused us to fight a lot, more than we ever had, because we're right in each other's face. We're not allowed to leave. We're not allowed to go to whānau. Whānau didn't want us to come over either because we're bursting their bubble. So we felt so isolated and just felt like we had no voice. Everything was on the phone or you were on hold forever. No one answered.
Thank you, Hazel. Well, jury, you've seen the impacts of isolation. You've seen it compounded, and you've heard the statistics of 172,000 cases of domestic violence and the strain on the police force and an inability to respond to that. So Hazel, I would like to thank you for providing your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. If I might add one thing to that, when we had a big fight and I took my sons and I went to the one neighbour that would let me in, and I asked her to can I use your phone to ring the cops? And you know what she said to me? She said to me, should I ring men up or should I ring the police? And I really wish we had rung my men up, because they rung the police. And a question I was asked over the phone, let alone my life was at risk, and so were my tamariki. They asked me if I was vaccinated. They asked me the size of my family, if they were vaccinated. And you know what I answered? So they took 3.5 hours to come. 3.5 hours, and during that time, who knows what would have happened. I had to hibernate, I had to hide myself within my neighbour's home, someone that was loving enough to help another New Zealander. So really stuff the government. We need to sack that government ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel Tukariri. You've just seen a snapshot inside the home, inside the four walls of what represents many New Zealanders during that time.
Yeah, your next witness, prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honour. I'd like to introduce my next witness at the height of the government lockdown, appropriate way and in a way that would make them heal. Surely there would have been another way for families to express their grief. I now invite my next witness to the stand, Mr. Paris Winiata. Paris, you've had to face every parent's worst nightmare during this time. In your own words and in your own time, could you please tell the jury here today your experience and how this government's inhumane policies have affected you and your family?
As the prosecutor has alluded to, there were 34,000+ families that suffered losses last year. My wife and I were one of them. And not to take anything away from the whānaus that lost loved ones, ours unfortunately wasn't due to natural attrition. Ours was a promise that was given to us before we were married, that we would be born a boy. This boy was the promised child that we so longed for. He passed away at the age of 14 months, and the government and their restrictions did not allow my whānau and our friends, key people in our lives that were going to deliver us strength, hope and peace to grieve during this process. We're not talking about 2020 when the level 4 lockdown, we're talking about August 2021 when science and statistics showed us that COVID was not a threat to our communities. For the last nearly 12 months, I've sat here wondering why me, why my son? And it's become evident today that this burden that I must carry is a burden that I must carry so that no one here in my nation has to carry that burden ever again. That if your loved ones pass away, I will stand and fight so that you can go through the grieving process that you so deserve.
Thank you, Paris, at the time that you were carrying out the funeral for your boy, I'd like to ask you about your vaccinated family members, because vaccinated family and friends, surely the government would have allowed them to attend the funeral, as the government were the ones who were ensuring the safety of the vaccination.
As we've clearly established here today, that the government have lied over and over and over again. And like most people, I wasn't truly aware of the extent until it affected me personally, me and my whānau. And that's why I choose to stand today, so that no one else has to go through the same thing. I would rather give you foresight rather than hindsight. They told us, if you want to go to music festivals, get vaccinated. If you want to be able to work in your chosen career, get vaccinated. They said if you want to attend tangihanga, get vaccinated. If you want to mourn and grieve with your whānau and friends, get vaccinated. Well, I had family and friends double vaccinated, wearing masks, compliant in every aspect that the government put upon us, and were still unable to attend my son's tangi. If that's not enough for you to get rid of this government, I don't know what is.
Thank you, Paris. Paris, I just want to, there's a process of grieving that is natural to all people. That takes time, but it's particular around having family around. Can you please talk about how the government's actions affected your grieving process?
The process is still going through today. Still unable to see whānau and friends, loved ones. It's like going over his burial. Every single time I see a whānau member or friend that was unable to visit his tangi, that the embrace is all over again. The strength that should have been provided for me on the day that I laid him to rest is continuing to have to overflow and overflow, and the memories of the tragic things that we saw, that I went through, is played over and over and over again. And I speak not just from physical harm, but mental welfare. We already know we're in a state of emergency with our mental health and where we're at. And I've got whānau and friends that I haven't seen for a long time that are here today, flown all the way from Australia. To be here with everyone else, to stand and fight. And for me, that's again going back over that. That's that embrace that they're giving me is an embrace that they should have been able to give me. That was my right to attain that embrace and that grieving process when I laid him to rest. I shouldn't be forced to have to go through over and over and over again the tragic loss that happened to me and my family. But in my closing statement, I do want to say, as hard as it has been, and the loss that we have had to go through, I will go through it over and over and over again, so that my fellow citizens of New Zealand won't have to go through it.
Thank you very much, Paris Winiata, for your testimony. There you see, Your Honour, an example of how the inhumane practices of this government have tampered with the natural process of human care and love for one another. I'd like now to call my next witness to the stand, Your Honour. From September to November in 2020, over 16,000 New Zealand businesses closed permanently, compared to 7,000 over the same period in the year before. Your Honour, that's an increase of 127%. Business closures were prominent in the sectors most affected by the pandemic, including hospitality, tourism, wholesale trade and the fitness sectors. For business owners, Your Honour, closing a business can be like a death. Years of sheer hard work all down the drain despite their very best efforts, and the feeling of failure and uncertainty of the future can deeply affect their mental well-being. I would like now to call upon the next witness to the stand, Steve Oliver. Thank you for being here today, Steve. Could you please tell us about your business and how the government's lockdowns have affected it initially?
Yeah, my name's Steve Oliver. We just run a family gym. Yeah, it's just a regular gym in West Auckland, and you know, we've just been we've 3 generations deep in the community, and we just you know, the community's a focus, and we were told to lock down, and you know, we could just see, you know, the first lockdown we done as we told, and we locked down. Then we could see in the community all these experts were telling us stuff was going on. It was like watching a episode of Sheldon Street. It was like something's happening on TV, but in reality, in community, it's not happening. So we just made a call, and we're like, man, you know, there's people out there suffering, there's people losing their families, people losing their jobs. You know, mental health is a real issue. That's the killer in our community. So we're just going to open up. So we just wanted to be a safety net and a safe place for the fathers and the mothers that you know, were losing everything at the time, and you know, the families that couldn't access, you know, couldn't go to the movies in the family, couldn't go to the pools, couldn't even go to the library. You know, it's such a danger to the community. And the kids, you know, the kids at 12 years old were given, you know, told to make a choice whether they took a needle or not, when you know, adults regret a tattoo after 2 weeks. And you know, they were kicked out of their family networks, they were kicked out of their sports teams, you know, and just at a time, a real crucial time when kids are trying to find their identity was huge. So there was a real mental health issue going right through the family, from the adults right through to the children. So we just wanted to be that safe space, and wanted to stay open just for the community.
So Steve, you made a courageous decision to stay open, to provide all the services and the care that you normally do for your community. Can you tell me how the government dealt with you not wanting to close your doors?
Well, just we're getting you know, constant emails and constant phone calls telling us that they're going to prosecute and shut us down. There's a lot of pressure, you know, a lot of pressure on us as a family, and you know, they just make visits coming around to my business, you know, trying to make us out like we're criminals. And I just said, man, I've got kids that are suicidal. I'm the only safe place for these kids. I'm the only place they can go. So if I close the door, that's on me. You know what I mean? So go ahead, throw your flyers around, and you know, they even went to the extent of redirecting our gym phone line to a vaccine hotline. I don't think they got too many hits off that one, but yeah, it's pretty feeble.
So you're talking about fines is one thing, but the additional pressure, and I would say the word bullying, that has been directed at your family, I guess that further compounds the threat to your business. What were the personal effects on your family then?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of anxiety. You know, I've lived a full life and always, you know, gone out on the front foot and in sport and business and everything, and proud of what we've achieved. And you know, it was a time where it puts a lot of pressure on the family, puts a lot of pressure on, you know, I've got 5 kids in the house, I've got 8 kids all up. We've got, you know, my baby just had a 2-year-old birthday just on Saturday, and you know, you feel bad, you know, because the pressure's real. The kids, you know, you're missing out on those, you know, those beautiful years with your kids under this pressure, and you know, sometimes you just got to do what's right, no matter what the personal costs.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you, prosecution. If you could introduce your panel witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honour. 62,000 Kiwis reported experiencing an adverse reaction, including myocarditis, stroke, heart inflammations, paralysis, and heart attacks. As lockdown restrictions relaxed and we went back to our normal lives, there was a large group of Kiwis who could not go back to normal. Many of them had trusted the government and were trying to remain compliant in order to keep their jobs and support their families, but they had been seriously injured and life as they knew it had dramatically changed. Your Honour, I now invite the next witness to the stand, Tania Martin. Tania, your husband Rob has been affected by the government's vaccine mandates during this time. Could you please tell the jury your experience?
Hello everybody. So yeah, I'm here to be a witness on behalf of my husband. This is my husband. I put him on a t-shirt. I made this for this occasion. So he was here at the last freedom protest. But yeah, since COVID, his life has been flipped upside down for the worse. I'm here on his behalf, but I'm also standing for all injured. There's thousands and thousands and thousands, and many that have lost their lives. So I'm here to represent him. My husband, he's a good man. He's a good man, and he's the strongest man I know. But he was fit and he was healthy. And yeah, 18 years ago we were here. We were here protesting, and enough is enough. And my husband, he was a specialised usher. He was up there at the front, more than well able to hold his own. But he can't anymore. He needs a stick to aid him while he walks. He is in constant pain, and he has chest pains, and he's in agony, and now, you know, if he needs to go a long distance, he needs a wheelchair, and that's what the vaccination has done to him.
I'm sorry to hear that, Tania. You know, New Zealand has ACC to provide financial relief and support to Kiwis who are dealing with injuries and accidents. This is what our taxes pay for. How has ACC supported your family during this time?
ACC who? What? Nothing. Nothing. We've paid our taxes. We've worked many years. And for what? A vaccination injury is not an accident. A heart attack and a stroke is not an accident. Where do we go? We're back on a benefit? Oh, and can I ask you a question? Not you. But maybe ask the government, Jacinda Ardern, this question's for you. Where's my supported living payment? I didn't get that. My husband didn't get that. But you go and pay it to people that are dead in a grave. And you go and pay it to people that are overseas that don't need it. And we need it because we don't have a job anymore. But I didn't get a living supported whatever payment.
Tania, you're clearly not getting the support that is due to you and that your taxes and our taxes pays for. Without having that support, and with what your husband is going through right now, take me a little bit through what your day-to-day life looks like now.
Day-to-day, it's a little bit hard for me, like, it's not about me, it's about my husband, and I'm standing for all those injured, but in my home right now, I've got an 11-year-old daughter who has a slipped hip, so she's got one leg longer than the other. I've got a muko who was in hospital last night because of a virus, and I tell you, you know, before COVID, they didn't tell you about a virus. If you had kids that were sick, they would say viral infection. Now they're naming all the viruses. They're making sure that it's not a COVID. They name all the viruses out there. But, you know, we all got pressures of life. We're all going through things. So just add on top of all of that, my husband, who's in constant pain, it's just not right. It's wrong.
Thank you, Tania. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, prosecution. Could you please make closing statements?
Thank you, Your Honour. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the testimonies of all the witnesses that have stood before you today. These stories, well, they are but representative of the thousands upon thousands of New Zealanders who have had their lives adversely affected and impacted by what they have been through by this government, our defendant. And you've seen just a snapshot of what goes on behind the four walls of their private homes. That's a simple snapshot of the wider impacts that have happened to many, many families that go unnoticed, that go unacknowledged, and that go ignored by the defendant, this government. If I can remind you today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the charge that have been brought to the court this morning is about inhumane acts, intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body, mental or physical health. I'm sure that you would be in agreement with me that the testimonies that you have heard today attest to the very thing that this charge is holding against this government. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's critical for you to find the defendant guilty of the charges held and send a strong message to this government, to the defendant who is on trial today, that their actions cannot continue. The evidence that you've seen today is undeniable. It's not anecdote, it's not media lies, it's undeniable evidence of this government's heartless, inhumane treatment to its own people. I trust, jury, that you will reach a verdict fitting of this defendant's inhumane actions. Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you, prosecution. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard from the prosecution and each of the witnesses today. It is now time for you to deliberate amongst yourselves and deliver your verdict as a group. Shortly, the court will go into recess, and when the court resumes, if you believe the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you will be asked to shout out guilty. If you believe the defendant is not guilty, please remain silent. Now, I just want to reiterate that and repeat it so that we're clear. When the court resumes, if you believe the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you'll be asked to shout guilty. If you believe the defendant is not guilty, please remain silent. Until then, court is in recess for 2 minutes. Okay.